Hello, everybody. Recording live from somewhere.
Welcome, everybody, back to the Pursuit Pod. Of course, I'm your host, Calvin Lymper, and it's been a very, very wild last week in sports, just between the NBA trade deadline, Olympic freeze for the Olympics. For hockey came out just recently, and obviously the NFL awards and Super Bowl, obviously. So, without further ado, let's just, rock right into it like we usually do with Roundball Rock. So, to start out, just some fallout of the NBA trade deadline. To start out, the Giannis trade falls flat, and it was kind of expected. The Timberwolves kind of got their guys, and they kind of gave up on their pursuit of trying to get Giannis. And then we got the Heat, just could not get a deal done for him. The Sixers obviously were not going to bring in VJ Edgecombe or get rid of VJ Edgecombe to get Giannis. So obviously there was that, and there just wasn't a trade that materialized for him. So obviously there's still the question mark of, will he leave in the offseason? I think that that's definitely going to be a worthwhile conversation when it becomes time to talk about the offseason and after the playoffs are done. And right now we got to see, when Giannis will return for the Bucks. We're going to see how they do the rest of the season. They didn't really have trades being done just because of they were kind of holding on to Giannis and seeing what they can get out of him. But one thing I saw that kind of alarmed me as a sports fan and as someone who is looking to get more into this industry, and that was that right after Giannis, I guess, announced that he was going to stay with the Milwaukee Bucks, he actually ended up posting something on his Instagram that was a partnership with the Trade with Everyone, Trade on Everything app and website Kalshi. Now, this is just terrible for sports, terrible for the league. Again, it was already bad, the fact that you had LeBron partnered with like BetMGM, or I think it was FanDuel or whatever he was, partnered with, that kind of, brings ethos to sports betting. But now we see Giannis partnered with Kalshi legit not even hours after the trade deadline's over. And first of all, one of the biggest trades on Kalshi, to my knowledge, just because it's so flooded on my Instagram feed and so flooded on my social media feeds and, on TikTok and stuff, talking about, that you can trade on the Giannis trade. Here's the odds that Kalshi has for Giannis, and here's the odds that he has that he's going to leave. Here's the odds that he's going to go to the Heat, the odds that he's going to stay. And the fact that he was the biggest thing on Kalshi for that whole month that saga was ongoing, and now he's, I'm a Kalshi partner, I'm going to, sponsor these guys, and I'm going to, represent sports betting in a way, it just kind of leaves a sour taste in my mouth, especially with, it just, the fact that people are making money off the fact that he's probably going to stay with the Bucks, or just the fact that there was the options that he was going to go to the Warriors, the Heat, the Timberwolves, the Sixers, whatever. And now he's partnered with them. He's getting money. He's, a shareholder of them. I don't think that's players, athletes, especially if they're not former athletes, if they're currently playing in the NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, I don't think that they should be able to partner, or that they should be able to have connections to these betting sites, especially Kalshi. I think Kalshi is they're just immensely an aggravating, thing, and this blemish on sports right now. The fact that, again, I've spoken about my disdain for sports betting. I don't even like the concept of it. I don't like the concept of it being legalized. I don't like the concept of people that I know, placing bets every game. I think that it's become an epidemic. It's become something bad that's become out of control. And this has only been it's been less than a decade that it's been legalized for the majority of sports fans. But, you got Fliff which is kind of legalizing soft betting on sports. You got, Kalshi, which is literally making every single thing in pop culture, every single thing in media, even politics, something that you can bet on. And the fact that, they use artificial intelligence, AI, for their advertisements, and that already, to a point, gets me so angry that you're using AI. I'm a very anti-AI person. I will never willingly use artificial intelligence for my work, and I will be held to that standard. I will hold myself accountable for that. It's just such a. It just gets me so angry. The fact that, Giannis might have been taking advantage of people the whole time, maybe feeding information to Shams. I think he's going to leave. I want him to stay with the Bucks, obviously. I've talked about that before, but I think he will leave in the offseason. I think that the Bucks are just on the path of they're trying to rebuild a little bit. They're trying to, get their team back to go. They had their championship with Giannis. I think he should leave. It's probably in his best interest too. At the same time, it's just like the fact that people lost money over this, people made money over this, and the fact that people are going to learn how to not to control themselves. There's no compulsive control, especially in this reactionary world of sports. The fact that you're going to see ESPN bet. I remember the Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier thing on ESPN when they were covering that. They got rid of their betting advertisement. You're literally placing the thing that caused this in front of everyone. You're placing this in front of people so they can, get caught into that trap of betting and get caught into that trap of, wasting their money. For, again, I know there's the contradictions of, maybe being a fantasy football owner, but you're winning money because of you made the best team, because of your knowledge. You're not winning money because you just so happen to put, the over on Kawhi Leonard points per game, or, the under on, James Harden rebounds, just something so small. It's just, you're watching sports for the wrong reason. You aren't enjoying sports for the sake of enjoying it. You have to add monetary gain. And that's my biggest issue with, apps like the Real app nowadays. I love the Real app. I will, if I can get a partner for this podcast, I know we're only 11 episodes in. We barely crack so many viewers, but if I could have a partnership, I would definitely want an advertisement from Real, because I love that app. I've been on that app since 2021, 2022, and it was before it got big. And just, the fact that every comment nowadays is just, make sure you get 6 points, make sure you got to hit the over. The comments are more about actual analysis of the game now. And just sports talk in general has become less of analysis of the game, love of the game. And now it's more about, you can even just look at any predictions for, playoff games in the NFL this year. When I was trying to research things for the 4th and 4 segment, I tried to look up, predictions. I was trying to kind of get a gauge of if real analysts that do their job is to analyze games, if they had the same opinions as me as to how games would go. I was just curious to see what they would say maybe would influence my predictions. And what happened was I saw that the first thing they focused on was betting odds. Will the game hit the over on total points? Will the spread be this and that? And it just makes me so mad to no end that it's just so legalized. And I think, and as much as I love Giannis as a player, love him as a person, love him as just a guy who's staying loyal to a small market, the fact that you're kind of capitalizing, maybe, not intentionally, but you're capitalizing off rumors made about you that may have been artificially planted by Shams, may have been artificially planted by the NBA, by Giannis, by the Milwaukee Bucks to make a little extra bread on the side. And that's an NBA conspiracy, and I don't want to get into all that. And there are more thoughts on sports betting. I can make a whole entire episode on that, and I could bring in guests for that. But to get back to, the actual sports side of things, and to get to, the NBA trade deadline, which is kind of the main topic here, I got to talk about my favorite trade of the NBA trade deadline, my favorite pickup. I talked about, Kevin Huerter for the Pistons, but the Timberwolves got Ayo Dosunmu for Rob Dillingham, Leonard Williams, and some second rounders. Minnesota I've said this for many episodes, they've been trying to look for a true point guard. And they didn't exactly get Io DeSumo to be, their traditional point guard. They're still probably going to be rolling DiVincenzo, whatever. But they got a stud. I mean, Io is averaging 15 points on 51, 45, 86 splits. He was essentially one of the best six-mans in the league. He was the sixth man for Chicago. And he adds just very needed backcourt depth for the Timberwolves. He's a lethal catch-and-shoot three. And he has excellent transition game. He's a great ball handler. He's always been named and described as someone who has just this unbeatable work ethic, someone who is just relentless, a guy who is a hardworking defender. And so far for the Wolves, he's put up 11 and 21. And again, I don't think he's the pivotal X factor piece. Again, I think they really did need to. I saw that, again, in trying to pursue Giannis, they actually gave up the opportunity to get Kobe White, if that's the right team that I'm thinking of. They gave up the opportunity to get Kobe White to kind of actually be their true point guard, and instead, to keep cap space for Giannis until they got rid of that. But they got Io, and I am just in love with this trade. I'm in love with this addition. I love Io DeSumo as a player. I think that he's one of the most underrated players in the league. Again, I'm going full Kenny Beecham right now. I'm going full King of the Fourth Quarter right now, talking about him and kind of gushing about him. But it's true. It's true. And watch out for the Wolves, because they might they just only got better this offseason. They only got better this trade deadline. So their odds of the title are definitely there. They're better contenders now. So, and now to kind of round out this section, we got to talk about the Zubac trade. He got traded to the Pacers for Benedict Mathurin, Isaiah Jackson, and 2 first-round picks, and maybe one of the most surprising trades. I know that there was kind of value to Zubac. I mean, he's one of the most valuable players in the league, I would say, as a trade piece, but I really did not even give a thought to the fact that Zubac would be traded from the Pacers. And I mean, I didn't really give a thought that Harden would be traded from the Clippers either. So, I mean, I guess there's that, but Zubac, he's gotten better with age. Io is one of the most underrated guards in the league. Zubac is the most underrated starting center in the league, in my opinion. I would argue that he's, a top 5, top 7 center in the league. He adds, for the Pacers, he adds great individual rebounding to a team that last year they ranked 28th in rebounding rate. And that's kind of crazy considering the fact that they went to the finals. They took the Thunder, who are seeming like the far and away the best team in the NBA, which is not true at this point. But they took those guys to 7 games, and they would have won that game if Halliburton stayed healthy. They just had the momentum. And that's the thing, if they had a guy like Zubac, if they had, a center, I know they had Miles Turner, but even besides that, if they had a true center who could be their rebounding force, they just rebounded well as a team, I would say, but still they didn't really have the numbers to back it up. And they still got as far as they did. So now there's a lot of background to kind of go into this trade, especially the haul that LA got. And again, I love Benedict Mathurin. I'm really impressed with his game. I think that I loved watching him in college. I liked him as a prospect. I like the way that he's kind of shaped out so far. But so I think that him and Garland I think that it's a good step for LA. I mean, it's not, you got rid of Zubac and Harden. There's not a good haul that you can get for that, in my opinion. But Garland is good. He's going to come back from injury. I've talked about him last episode. But Zubac being gone, now you have Benedict Mathurin. Mathurin and Garland can work. Kawhi Leonard can stay. And you could have a very sneaky good start to your rebuild here, especially with a pick. And especially with this weird 2026 first-round pick that Indiana is giving the Clippers, where the Clippers get the pick only if it goes in the lottery 5 to 9. If it will stay in Indiana if it falls to 1 to 4 and then 10 to 30. If it falls in those ranges, then LA gets a 2031 first round pick, unprotected, I believe, which again is a few years in the future, but still. This is such an odd trade, especially with, I guess it's an odd pick, I should say. The trade is just strange in general, but this pick is this is the weirdest protection. I didn't even know you can do things like this. I mean, you can't do this kind of thing in 2K, so I didn't think you could do it in real life. So, but this is just banking on a lot for the Pacers because, first of all, you're banking a lot on Halliburton to stay how good he was. He hit his peak right before he got his Achilles tear. And only the most talented players in the league and in the world can come back from an Achilles tear still at 100%. So there's just the question mark of that, but also just to miss out, potentially getting back to great shape for next year with a guy who will go 5-9 because this draft class is just stacked, I would say, just loaded with talent from 1 to 60, from picks 1 to 60. So, and their odds right now, just the way their record shows and all that, they're seeded right now 5-9. So this is going to be a home run for the Clippers if this pick goes 5-9, and this is going to be looking like a head scratcher of a trade, I feel like, for the Pacers, because they get a win now center in Zubac. And again, they need Halliburton to come back. They got rid of an X factor in Mathurin, so there's a lot riding on that pick, and that pick kind of makes up the whole trade. I mean, right now, talking on paper, the Pacers won this trade by a landslide, I would say. But again, Mathurin is pretty good, and it's just those picks, man. It really the grades of this trade cannot be said yet until, the end of the season, obviously, but until we get that draft lottery to see where that pick goes, because that pick could be coveted for both teams. So now, and this Clippers trade and just kind of this Clippers rebuild and the fact that they blew everything up, it makes me wonder the implications for the Clippers. And there's now the rise talking about the aspiration deal, which I talked about earlier in the year, and what is the implications and punishment for this aspiration Kawhi Leonard deal that, again, I thought it should have avoided his contract. I thought that they should have been forced to release him. But is there a reason why they're trying to commit to a rebuild? I actually thought that Kawhi Leonard was going to be gone at the trade deadline. I thought the Clippers were going to try to move on from him just to get rid of the aspiration stuff. And I think that they would have cleared their name if Kawhi was off LA and they're going to really commit to this young rebuild. But now it's just, will there be something coming for us after, will there be something coming for us after the All-Star weekend coming up? And is this aspiration deal finally going to have its punishments? I don't know. Again, I think that if they would have done something, they would have done something already, because, the suspension for Kawhi for this would probably be based on how they usually, go about suspensions and punishments like this. I wonder if it's going to be like a death penalty for the Clippers, but I'm not sure. We'll see. But I am nervous in thinking that maybe the Clippers have been doing these random deals. James Harden requested trade. I think I said because maybe he knew something about the aspiration, because they're on a heater. The Clippers were on a heater leading up to the trade deadline. Like, they were on fire. We talked about them in segments before, how they were just on top of the NBA in terms of pace. They had that hole that they kind of dug for themselves in the beginning of the year, but they're coming back. And they had Kawhi, James Harden, but now it's just, Zubac is gone. You might get a decent pick for next year, but who knows? It might stay with the Pacers. This could really just be an absolute miss from the Clippers in this trade. And again, that, and if Kawhi Leonard gets suspended, if there are sanctions for this aspiration deal, then we're going to see, just an absolute miss on a trade here by the Clippers. Now, it was Super Bowl Sunday just a few days ago. Seahawks won 29-13. And I want to start out this segment by, let's look over my predictions. So I thought that the Seahawks would steamroll the Patriots. I was correct. I actually said 31-13. I posted a little graphic on my media Instagram about, my predictions for the score, the stat lines of the quarterbacks, and I was pretty perfect on Drake May's stat line. And I was pretty good on the score. I was only 2 points off. I said Seahawks 31, Patriots 13. Seahawks won 29-13. So winner's correct. Drake May's stat line was correct. And I mean, to speak about Drake May, he had, according to numbers in the graph I saw on Instagram with some pretty good sources, he had the worst EPA for a quarterback with 3 playoff games started. And that's just absolutely, just nuts. Especially with, again, if CJ Stroud won that game against the Patriots, he would have been far and away the worst player with the EPA. Who knows how far they would have gone. Because, again, that AFC Championship game would have been played in Denver. Or it was anyway. I don't know what I'm talking about there. But CJ Stroud would have had the worst EPA by far if he won against the Patriots, played that third playoff game. But this is the thing. The Patriots just kind of showed that their offense couldn't find a spark. And Drake May comes in, throws, 252 yards in the fourth quarter alone, all garbage time, gets, I think, 1 touchdown out of it, actually, maybe 2. I don't remember if the first touchdown they had was at the end of the third or if it was the beginning of the fourth. But this was just a game that, from the beginning, you could tell that first field goal from Seattle and the fact that it stayed, 6-0, 9-0. Jason Myers for Seattle actually beat the Patriots all by himself. I think he scored, 15 points all by himself? Most field goals, most points put up by a kicker in the Super Bowl, at least most field goals put up by a kicker. He should have been MVP, but making sense. Kenneth Walker had himself a game. He was really the only thing going for Seattle's offense. This was like a perfect defensive battle from both sides. Seattle barely came into field goal territory every time, and usually it was because of Kenneth Walker. So there's where the MVP status comes in. But this was just, a dream matchup and a dream game for defensive coaches all around the league. I think that they're definitely going to be showing a lot of this defensive film in just film rooms all around the country for college, high school, different NFL teams, because it was really just a perfect showing from both sides. And I think really the key of the game for these two teams, and to kind of sway one way or the other for both sides, was the fact that one quarterback knew how to handle the pressure and another quarterback did not know how to handle the pressure. Drake May, again, you can say what you want about his O-line, but whenever the O-line kind of collapsed and he was getting rushed heavy by maybe 1 or 2 guys, you could see he wasn't getting the ball out in time. He was getting stuck at where he was at. If the dude was coming in on him, he would really just stand there and his vision just kind of went away and he would get sacked. There was really a moment where I think I don't know if it was Will Campbell, I think it was a different O-lineman. He is literally getting shoved into Drake May. Drake May sees it and just stands there without even trying to do anything, not even looking. I think he was looking for a deep pass or something. It's just, that's the tail of the tape for me. Sam Darnold, every single thing that the Pats' rush defense, or I guess their pass rushing, I should say, was just absolutely incredible, absolutely on fire. People kind of underrate how good the Pats defense was in this game. Christian Gonzalez was on fire. In the secondary, he stopped maybe the only huge throw of the game with that. Rashid Shaheed almost had a wide open lane deep down the field, and Christian Gonzalez comes up and gets a single finger on it. And that's the thing. It's just, there's the tail of the tape again. I'm going to keep saying it, but Sam Darnold, he had pressure on him, a little spin move around it. There's many times where I really thought Drake May could get out of these pressure situations if he moved his legs once. If he literally just stepped back, maybe just pivoted that way, pivoted this way, or just saw the sideline and just throw it out, that's the tail of the tape. Sam Darnold literally gets smacked millions of times in this game. You can look over the film. You can look over the All-22 film. He gets just ransacked most of the game, and he's calm, cool, collected, finds himself a way out of it, and even if it doesn't lead to a gain, maybe if it leads to an incomplete pass, then he still got out of it. He didn't allow that many sacks. He was able to just, stay calm, not have to worry about the team kind of collapsing around him. He himself just found a way to stay alive. And that was really, I feel like that was the most admirable thing about his game in the Super Bowl. I mean, he wasn't the most impressive quarterback, but just numbers wise and, arm wise, but just the fact that he had the IQ to be able to get around the pressure. And you can say everything you want about O-line versus O-line and the kind of thing there, but both defenses were playing with such just tenacity and just such vigor that there's really just I just don't think that it's fair to say like, oh, well, Drake May only lost because he had this O-line, and you can say what you want about that, but I mean, it's really just he couldn't find a way around the pressure. He really couldn't find his way around the pressure at all this postseason, and it does remind me of a Joe Burrow run, and I almost wonder if the Patriots are going to fall into that Cincinnati Bengals territory where they had the team for it, they don't have the O-line for it. In the one playoffs that they were able to get past Mahomes, get past Lamar, Josh Allen, and then it just so happens that the next few years, Mahomes is going to be back in the playoffs. Lamar Jackson is going to be back in the playoffs. Maybe Josh Allen actually has a team around him to get him out of the playoffs. Then I don't see the Patriots being able to compete against those guys. Again, maybe it's just holding. I mean, even Joe Burrow, if he can get an O-line, or if they can just improve as a team overall and actually not be dysfunctional, he can actually stay healthy, then there you go. I think that this was the Patriots' chance, and I wonder if this is going to be a Joe Burrow situation where you're not going to find him really competing for the next few years just because of this and that. And again, I think the Patriots are much more competent than the Bengals have been, but I don't know. All I know is that my biggest takeaway from this game was seeing how each quarterback took pressure and seeing how each quarterback, even if they weren't it wasn't the best game for Sam Darnold. It wasn't the best game for Drake May at all. And Drake May is going to get better. He's a second-year guy who was almost MVP, got this far. I just think that this Patriots team wasn't exactly ready to handle this many defensive pressures in a row. May had maybe one of the worst Super Bowls by a quarterback, which is not something you'll see with guys like, Sam Darnold kept cool and composed. He was the definition of how a quarterback should act in the Super Bowl, even if he didn't have any crazy plays. Jalen Hurts has played two of his best career games in the Super Bowl, maybe his best two career games in the Super Bowl. Undoubtedly, two near-perfect games, if not perfect games. Mahomes obviously steps up in the Super Bowl all the time. He's going to be that comeback factor. You got guys like Tom Brady, the GOAT, again, comeback factor, always calm and composed. That's the difference. Matt Stafford just has the team around him. He knows where to get to the ball to where it has to go. He knows how to elevate an already pretty good, well-structured, well-coached team. Drake May just has to prove a little more to me. And as from an analysis, point of view. But congratulations to the Seattle Seahawks. I'm very glad they won, and I'm very glad my prediction was as close as it was, even if we didn't really see the JSN show, the Cooper Kupp show. But congrats to Cooper Kupp as well. Congrats to Sam Darnold for just being the absolute comeback story. The fact that the Jets actually won. I guess the Jets finally hit big on a quarterback there, and the Vikings have to be just crying after that. So congratulations to the Seahawks. I really think that the tail of the tape and just the difference between the two teams was the composure of two quarterbacks. So, and you can say what you want about experience, but the way people were talking about May made me think that he was supposed to be coming here, win another chip for Patriots, and then go on a three-peat. So narratives. I think narratives, they really do rule the world when it comes to sports. Now, for my stick on the ice, we have an exciting time here in hockey. NHL players are back in the Olympics, and the Olympics are starting up today. Actually, I believe in an hour after the time I'm recording this as of right now. But before we get into that, we have to talk about a huge trade. Artemi Panarin was finally traded away from the Rangers, legit right after posting last episode. Like, they happened to just wait until right after I edited and watched over my last episode is when they actually sent out the notification that he was traded right at the NHL trade deadline before the Olympic freeze. He was sent to the Los Angeles Kings for Liam Greentree and a conditional third-round pick. I mean, Panarin, he's 34 years old, but he's still leading those bottom feeder Rangers in points with 57 points and also with assists. And he was fifth in Hart votes only 2 seasons ago. Panarin's going to be a huge addition for the LA Kings, especially because they play with such a low pace that he can really bring in some much needed offensive fire to this wild card hopeful team, a team that's just trying to compete. And if they can get into the playoffs, they can be really scary because they have an elite defensive team and they just need that offense, especially from Panarin. And the fact that they actually swiped him for pretty cheap. I mean, Liam Greentree is really interesting. He's a guy who has been far and away the Kings' best prospect, and he has high-end offensive capabilities, but he's just not at the level to where he's going to be in the NHL yet. Maybe soon with the Rangers, but there's just the conversation that the Rangers, they really just need to do more after the Olympic freeze and before the trade deadline in March if they want to keep going with their rebuild, if they want to keep going, trying to, tank a little bit, get better picks. There just has to be more than just what Liam Greentree can bring to the Rangers, and I don't think that he's going to be the absolute potential star that they maybe are looking for with him. But enough about NHL. Let's get into the Olympic teams, and I think really just the best way to get excited about this, and just as someone who loves rankings, as someone who loves, power rankings, seeing the rosters of these teams, and I'm really excited about the NHL players being back here in Milan Cortana. So let's just start out, our little Olympic segment with the Daily Face-Off. Scott Maxwell, Hunter Crowther actually ranked all 12 Olympic teams, and this is actually helpful for me as someone who wants to know who's on each team and the storylines behind it, and also to any of the people watching who kind of want to get a little crash course into what to look out for this upcoming tournament with the prelims starting today, the day I post this. So let's start out with the Daily Face-Off's ranking of these teams. And number one, far and away, there's just the top 4 is kind of leagues above the rest of the playing field, and I would actually say the top 2 are leagues above the rest of the playing field. But number 1 is Canada. Team Canada, they have, Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, Sidney Crosby. They have wingers like Brandon Hagel, Mitch Marner, Mark Stone, Nick Suzuki. They literally just like the best 30 players in the NHL, just pick them out of a hat, and that's Team Canada. They have also one of the most valuable players in the league, literally, for the San Jose Sharks, in Macklin Celebrini. This is legit just a greatest hits compilation of the NHL. And as unbeatable as they may seem with their roster, especially with the fact that they won the Four Nations face-off last year, is their goaltending might be an issue. And this might be the thing that leads them to lose a game, maybe not get the medal, even though I think that they are on great pace to. Jordan Binnington has just been terrible by all measures this year. Advanced statistics, traditional statistics. And yes, they do have Darcy Kemper and Logan Thompson also in the crease as backups, but is it really enough compared to the defensive side for USA or the other goaltending squads of the other 11 teams? How good can it be compared to those teams, especially the USA? At the same time, I think that, these lines and these defensive pairings can bring the offense needed to kind of, in case things go to crap on the goaltending end for Canada. I think that they shouldn't have to worry because, McDavid's going to be amazing. McKinnon's going to be amazing. Cale Makar is going to turn great defense into great offense. And it's just, I'm not worried about if Canada can't score. I think it's just a factor of they need to score more than their goalies may let in. And that's really just the Achilles heel for Canada. Besides that, they're probably far and away the favorite to get the gold this year, especially with that roster now that they actually have NHL players. They actually have the best Canadian hockey players playing for them. It's not going to be a Mickey Mouse medal. So, number 2, we have United States, Team USA. Obviously, the Tkachuk brothers, Jack Eichel, Austin Matthews, very impactful, just forward line. And again, Matthews, Eichel are a very impactful center duo. And they now have Quinn Hughes. And actually, they only lost that Four Nations face-off with NHL players to Team Canada without Quinn Hughes. So only a goal without him. So maybe that defense can be the game changer when it comes to maybe getting over the hump and actually beating Canada despite them just looking so unstoppable. They have Jacob Slavin, who is a big X factor for Team USA in the Four Nations. And not to mention, they actually probably have the best goalie depth in the tournament. They have the reigning Hart winner, Connor Hellebuck, Jake Ottinger, and Jeremy Swayman behind them as backups. And USA won in the IIHF World Championship Tournament in 2025. Tage Thompson and Clayton Keller being a part of that team. They'll also have replacement defenseman Jackson Lacombe there. So Team USA is just solid all around, and it's really just going to be them versus Canada, but there's some other hitters here. There's definitely some other hitters here to watch out for. And number 3, to start out, the next tier of the ranking, we have Sweden, and they have a fantastic defensive core with Rasmus Dahlin, Rasmus Andersson, Gustav Forsling, and Tampa Bay star Victor Hedman, and not to mention Erik Karlsson. I mean, that is just maybe one of the best defensive just units in this whole tournament, defensive units in just hockey in general, just all those names together. But they also have an abundance of great forward lines. They have William Nylander, Adrian Kemp, Elias Peterson, Philip Forsberg, Lucas Raymond, the resurging Mike Zibanejad. And obviously, you also have on that third line Eriksson Ek, who, he's a great player. He's going to be on that third line, and that's definitely going to keep the scoring potential, keep the actual, it's just a good thing to have him, in that depth for you. And the goalies, the crease is going to be dominated by Minnesota Wild players. You have Philip Gustafsson, who, he blew it in the Four Nations, but he's been very good this season, and this is going to be his comeback story on the international stage. And then Jesper Wallstedt, the rookie, who's been also a standout this year. But the biggest hit to Sweden is definitely no Leo Carlsson, as he is injured right now, but he would have been maybe the star for them, especially with the season that he's been having. And I think the lack of just him being on the squad will definitely blow any chance they have at maybe beating USA Canada. But there's still a chance there. Again, anything can happen when it comes to this, especially with those top 4 teams. And to round out that kind of, top tier of teams, who I would say Sweden and number 4 Finland are definitely in that second tier, but they still have a fighting chance, especially if things all go well together. Finland, they definitely would have been third over Sweden if Alexander Barkov was healthy, but they still have Sebastian Aho, Rup Hintz, and Anton Lundell as their center depth, those top 3 centers. They also have Stars teammates, some chemistry with Mikko Rantanen and Miro Heiskanen on this squad. I just think the biggest heel for them, the biggest glaring issue for them is just their bottom 6 just might not cut it against the heavyweights in the tournament, which, their team is great. Their team is definitely above the rest of the 8 other teams in the tournament, but just the lack of that amazing all-star firepower from the top two lines. That doesn't really translate into the bottom two lines. Their bottom six just might not cut it. I just think that'll be the difference between kind of trying to compete for silver and gold and maybe trying to just fight for the bronze there. But they should get a medal or at least be in contention for it. I think there's no doubt about that. And Scott Maxwell of the article that actually ranks these teams notes that Finland always creates teams accurate to the building of real NHL teams with their star power and depth, especially money-wise. And this is like the closest thing we have to the way an actual NHL team functions on the ice here in Milan. So that'll be very interesting for Finland to see how they kind of compete against Sweden, USA, Canada, but they definitely still have a very, very good chance there. Now, to round out the rest of the field, we have to start with Czechia, who they're trying to fight for their first medal, potentially since 2006. They have David Pastrnak, Martin Necas, and Thomas Hertl as their stars, and maybe right next to USA, one of the best goalie squads and depth, just in terms of pure NHL performance, with Lukas Dostal, Karel Vejmelka, and Dan Vladar, my Philadelphia legend himself, Dan Vladar, the savior of our team. Just from an NHL statistical standpoint, that is one of the best goaltending, squads in the tournament. And I think the one downfall to Czechia's game would be that they're in the same group as Canada for the preliminaries, so their seeding might not fare well when it comes to the actual tournament side of things. But their round robin is going to be tough. But they're going to have to just prove everybody wrong in the actual tournament side. Number 6, we have Switzerland, who are coming off of back-to-back World Championship silvers in 2024 and 2025. They have Devils duo Nico Herschier and Timo Meier, Nino Niederreiter, Kevin Fiala, and they also have, of course, defensemen Roman Josi, and J.J. Moser. The only thing is they really lack a real star in front of their net. They only have 2 Swiss League goalies with little NHL experience in Akira Schmid. So kind of similar to Canada, as much as they do have pretty significant firepower on the offensive side and to actually, put pucks in the net on the other side, their goaltenders might be an issue here. So that's really the name of the game for Switzerland. Now, number 7, Germany, the Leon Draisaitl and Moritz Seider show. Just in all sense of the word, this is really just going to be Leon Draisaitl leading things here. But they also have JJ Peterka and Tim Stutzel, who are going to join in with NHL talent on the forward lines. But the team overall is made up of German league players with mixed NHL experience. This really could be a potential upset in the Americas group, especially with Kraken goalie Philipp Grubauer, who has just been incredible this season, one of the comeback player of the year candidates so far. So keep your eyes peeled for a potential upset in an American group by Germany, especially with Leon Draisaitl, Moritz Seider, but also just good goaltending there. But again, the rest of the team is just, the depth really isn't there to compete at the highest level. So that's why they sit number 7. But for number 8, we have Slovakia, who actually just won their first Olympic medal in hockey in history with bronze last Winter Olympics in 2022. And they actually had the tournament MVP of that year with Montreal's Juraj Slavkovsky. And just the team overall just has little real NHL experience with Eric Semak, Martin Fehervari, Simon Niemak, and they just don't really have any standout goalies. And actually, one of them is currently a college hockey player at Minnesota Duluth. So I think they just kind of have a lack of, that real amazing high-end just experience, and I think, and just exposure. But the Slovakia national team for hockey is definitely on the way up. So that's something to look out for in just years to come. And now number 9, we have Denmark. They have a promising underplayed NHL player in Nikolaj Ehlers, who plays for the Hurricanes. They also have Tampa's Oliver Bjorkstrand and Ottawa's Lars Eller. And Denmark actually previously beat, an inferior Canada team in the 2022 preliminary round, 3-2. But again, this was a Canada team without their NHL talent. And I just think that just compared to those top 8 countries, this is really just a product of lack of exposure in Denver overall into the game of hockey compared to those first few countries. But the one thing to note about Denmark is that they do have a game stealer here in their goal, and that's Frederik Andersen. So if anyone can lead to the upset, it would be Andersen, as long as the offense from Denmark is actually firing on all cylinders. Now, to round out the bottom 3 in the tournament, with a lot of notes for them actually. Number 10, Latvia. They won bronze in the 2023 Worlds. Yuvan Belinskis and goalie Artur Silovs are highlights of players from the roster that won that bronze, who they're going to return to the Olympics. 18-year-old defenseman Albert Smits is going to be a top 10 draft pick this June. They might not have the potential yet to be a big name, but I think maybe years down the line, Latvia could be rejuvenated. We're going to see Smits is probably going to be hopefully a star in the NHL, and maybe that team will build up over time. So I think it's really just looking for the future for Latvia. Now, number 11, we have Team France, and France and Italy are definitely on the bottom here. They kind of have a gap between Latvia, France, and then there's going to be another gap between France and Italy. And so for France, they're really just lacking scoring from Perik Dube and Tim Bozen, but they will have the only NHL player on their roster, Alexander Texier, and then you have Stefan DaCosta wearing the captaincy. And there is potential in players like Justin Adamo and Philip and Dylan Faber, but France is just the name of their game is really just muscle on the defensive end that will make up for the lack of pure offensive skill as compared to the top 10 squad. So France is a team that they're not going to do much, but they do have Texier, who maybe his experience in the NHL, maybe his big high end offensive firepower might actually lead to something, but just overall, they're going to have to rely a lot on just being a physical team. And number 12, and this is a shame, but the hometown team, of course, they need to have a team, is number 12, Italy. And they actually have 15 dual citizens on this roster. And these players come from USA, Canada, Germany, Sweden, South Africa. But overall, this is made up of primarily ICHL players, which is the Italian Hockey League. And their standout star probably is Montreal prospect, or at least former Montreal prospect, Matt Bradley. They have a solid passer in Mikael Fruckland. And they do have some pre-existing chemistry with a lot of the team, just from a lot of these. They have a lot of duos that kind of play together. So they have Tommy Perdeller and Nick Sarancino. The Italian team, they let's be real, they're only going to score maybe a few goals, if at all, during this preliminary round robin, but they're going to be shut out most games. Let's just be real. They do have a former Blue Jackets prospect in defenseman Thomas Larkin, who is going to end up being their captain, but besides that, they're really just the worst team in the tournament, I think, just by all standards. And again, it's a shame, but maybe the fact that they're playing in their own country will add something, and let's see if they actually win a game here. Now, they do have an X factor in David Fedani, who was a starter in the Division 1A World Championship last year, and he actually ended up outplaying a NHL prospect at goalie. So, and they also have Ducks prospect, the only remotely NHL experienced player, I guess, like NHL talent, is Damien Clara, who is going to be the backup under Fedani in net. And he started in pre-tourney play at 21 years old. So that's actually a pretty good feat. Now, something to note is that they do have the gold medal winning coach for Finland from 2022 in Jukka Jalonen, who maybe his experience with winning gold and being on that that powerhouse Finland team, maybe that can lead to something to actually get going for Italy. And that might be the thing that kind of sways Italy from being just an absolute bust when it comes to just overall, being dead last tournament to maybe winning a game, maybe squeaking out an upset here and there. But besides that, I think that Italy is just dead in the water. So that'll be the Olympics, and I'm very excited for it to start out today. And that's kind of just the run through the names to know and the predictions as to, where the teams are going to rank with the tournament coming up. So now let's move over to the Phanatic, and we have, it's been a long episode, but to start out, the Philadelphia Flyers, they end out their schedule before the Olympic freeze and, the Olympic break with a tough overtime loss to the Senators. They could just not get anything going on goal. Broad Street Hockey's Madeline Campbell described their offense as anemic. Only Noah Cates, Denver Barkey, Drysdale, and Mitchkov had actual shots on goal in that game. And just overall, the Flyers are just found in just deep desperation mode here as they fell far down the standings out of January. And now they have a long break to figure it out. So Flyers right now, the way they stand is they're at 61 points, 25, 20, and 11. They're now 8 points down out of a wild card spot and also 8 points out of a third in the Metro spot. So it's going to be a fight. The Penguins we've talked about this, they've surged to 70 points in the same amount of games played, but the Flyers could jump the Capitals. The Capitals are only 4 points ahead, but also 3 games ahead. And there is some work to be done with jumping the Islanders, who are 8 points ahead with 2 more games played. Who needs to step up here? Jason McNeil of Broad Street Hockey named 3 players that have kind of been keys to why the Flyers are not working and guys that really just need to step it up. Sean Couturier, the center himself. Sean Couturier, the captain himself, he's been on a 2-month scoring slump. He's put up a point here and there, but they haven't had any goals since December 7th. And he only has 5 goals so far as the captain of this team. And there's more attention drawn to his 8-year contract, especially with production down. And even Denver Barkey couldn't aid him on the line with him and Tippett. So Noah Cates, again, 2 centers are in slump at the same time. Cates has definitely been struggling since Forrester's been out and just kind of lost his energy. And lastly, Sam Urson. And we need him to step up, especially because we don't want Kolosov to be our backup next year. And he's just is very consistently subpar. He has some solid games here and then, but just overall they need a fresh start. Now the trade rumors are still sprouting up for TK or Tippett to be on the chopping block to actually buy here for the Flyers. Removing Konechny would be terrible. He's an actual leader. He's been the only bright spot amidst our terrible 2026 so far. And I think that Tippett would be the main guy attached to trades, if anything. Bobby Brink, he's had a good year so far, and he will be a restricted free agency. Bobby Brink, he's had a good year so far. He will be a restricted free agent in the offseason. And he might be the best one to move since, Alex Bump is coming soon. Porter Martone is going to be NHL bound. And Barkey is officially here in the NHL. So a lot of things to consider there for the Flyers. Talking very quickly on the Eagles, we have Chris Cooper, who is going to be our offensive line coach now with Jeff Stalin out. And, the media's kind of milked to death the whole Stalin thing. But Cooper's a good hire. He was a former offensive guard in the NFL. He spent the last 4 years as the Vikings offensive line coach, and he was most recently ranked 18th in both 2024-2025 for the Vikings O-line, especially, and he actually has some chemistry with Vic Fangio, as he was a part of the Broncos staff from 2019 to 21 as an offensive lineman assistant. And just overall, the fact that Mannion has been entrusted to bring in, he's brought in different guys on the staff now. It just shows that they're really trusting Mannion. They're giving him power. And it's a good sign here for the a team that right now there's a lot of conversations about Nick Sirianni maybe being too controlling and just things not really going well there in the Eagles front office. So this is a good sign here, and that Mannion is coming in with his own tools. He's kind of building his own coaching tree here. So it's pretty cool stuff. And finally, the Sixers, they've done nothing at the trade deadline. They got rid of Eric Gordon, Jared McCain, which, I mean, the McCain trade, everyone's very mad about it, but I don't know. I'm not that affected by it because he's had a slump this year. I don't really know where he's going to fit with the guard depth right now, and with Edgecombe kind of coming up, I'm not sure how that's all going to shake out, especially with all those guys playing well together. And I mean, Dominic Barlow's been a star recently, and they've officially signed him. So, I mean, it's just kind of weird. It's a very rare lack of aggression by Daryl Morey, but at the same time, it's just like, was there a role for Jared McCain? And at the same time, how many times are you going to be sent to the G League to develop in a win now team only to not develop? So at least we got Dalen Terry, and he's only 23 years old. He averaged 7.8 points per game in the last 4 games before the trade deadline. And actually, he's averaging on his career 32% for three-pointers, but right now he's a 41.3% shooter this season, and he can impact his games with a 6'6" frame and all right vision, and he's okay handling of the ball, and he really just checks all the boxes for a Nick Nurse offense, or I guess just a Nick Nurse system with defensive switches, has the potential for a utility role, and he could bring good guard help too with the recent Gordon and McCain trades. So Dalen Terry, you are a Philadelphia 76er, and we're glad to have you, but still just a bad taste left in our mouth because of the McCain trade and just kind of a lackluster trade deadline in general. And to finish things out for this Pursuit podcast, I know it's been a really dense one, but the biggest news in Clemson recently was definitely Sean Poppy was extended as the head coach for women's basketball. So far, they've been 17-8 this year and 8-5 in ACC play. And Poppy has just been he's been a game changer at every program he's been a part of. He used to be in Chattanooga, and he was coach of the year in that conference. And he actually turned around Chattanooga to be a pretty good women's program for basketball. And Poppy's brought in high attendance last year. He brought in, I think, the most attendance for a season last year since 2002. And just has overall brought more coverage and eyes on women's basketball. So just from a media standpoint, he's turning the season around and turning that program around. At the same time, he's also doing good things on the internal side. He's an amazing recruiter in both high school prospects and in the transfer portal. Transfer portal, he's brought in Russ from Georgia Tech, Mia Moore from UAB, and Rachel Rose from Wofford. And then for prospects, he brought in number 9 recruit Trinity Jones, number 40 recruit Julia Scott, number 46 Kimora Fields, number 63 Mia Green for next year. And Clemson's, according to 24/7 Sports, actually has the 4th best recruiting class for women's basketball in the class 2026. So that's very exciting stuff for the future of women's basketball, especially with Sean Poppy here for at least a few more years. So, I mean, I don't really know what better job he could get, so I think he'll be here for a long time. And right now, our women's basketball team is 39th in net rankings, and unfortunately, they are 2-7 on quad 1 wins, and they actually are on the bubble for last 4 in, according to ESPN bracketology, but they could be on their way up, and especially just in the future, they'll be on their way up. Just, considering the fact that their program has kind of turned itself around, and the fact that they're getting more attention, more media coverage, and they're bringing in, they're the number 4 best recruiting class. If more and more people show they want to be in Clemson for women's basketball, then that's definitely going to increase, and we're definitely going to have some really good recruiting classes coming up. Finish out the Clemson Corner and just this really dense, jam-packed episode of the Pursuit so far. We had to finish with just some Clemson football talk, and that's Dabo was reportedly named number 23 of 25 names to watch for the 2026 college football coaching carousel. And I'm going to just finish out this segment with a quote from CBS Sports' Brad Crawford. Quote, "Like the captain of the Titanic, Dabo will go down with the ship and will be kicking and screaming on his way out if it comes to that. Stubborn in ways with the Tigers, the two-time national champion hasn't won a playoff game since the 2019 season, and they just hired Chad Morris as his new offensive coordinator. Yeah, that Chad Morris, whose coaching career since starring as Clemson's play caller from 2011 to 14 consists of failed head coaching tenures at SMU, Arkansas, and 1 year as Auburn's offensive coordinator." The conversation about Dabo leaving Clemson, again, I really think that it would be a decision from Clemson and not from Dabo, because he has a lot of power here. And he is the school. He is the athletic program just in general, not even just in football, but just overall. He kind of brings the money for us. There's a lot of conversation of if he should go or just what to do with him. So it really is just, there's a lot of conversations with that. And we already had a long, long year, and a long year that actually didn't have the best season. And I really still don't think that it's fair to kind of say, like, oh, let's get rid of Dabo. But I really just think it depends on if this Chad Morris hire works. But at the same time, he's brought nothing but good things here for Clemson so far. He had one bad year, and he had a bad year like in his third year. So, and he still brings in recruits. He still brings in pretty good transfers. So, like, the Clemson Paul still has a lot of power. So I'm not concerned myself about it. So we have to just see what's to do about that. But CBS Sports believes that at least he's on the lower end of candidates who might be in the coaching carousel. I think that he would be highly valued. That will be all for the Pursuit Pod for this week. And I hope that everyone enjoyed the Super Bowl. I hope that everyone enjoys the Olympics so far and just everything that's been going on with that. I saw the Quad God did really well for USA, so that's pretty cool. I also saw a Norwegian athlete confess to cheating on his wife. I saw it this morning when I was eating breakfast in some interview. So that's pretty cool. There's some pretty cool stuff for the Olympics so far. So thank you all for watching, and just thank you all for listening every week and listening to me ramble on about this kind of stuff. But I am really passionate about it. And so, I love you all. But to finish this out, go Tigers, go Sixers. I mean, wish we did more at the trade deadline, but still, go Sixers. Go Birds. We'll be back next year. Go Flyers. Hopefully we figure it out over this Olympic break. And, soon. Go Phillies. So, I'll see y'all.